Good morrow, fuckers. How do you fare? Shall we pour the tea? Sorry, just tapping into my ancestry and talking like a colonizer. That's what they sounded like when they floated the fuck over here on the Mayflower, saying all kinds of stupid shit like calling skirts petticoats and shouting shit like huzzah. Probably to, congratulate some little pale-faced demon named Constance for washing her knickers in the river alone for the first time. White people doing their own chores. Could you imagine? And they called cats mousers. Grab 'em by the mouser. But that was before my time. What do I know? I should probably keep my mouth closed and leave it to the experts. Experts like Rotten Rick Santorum. He knows all about the birth of the United States. Well, the whitewashed cliff notes, of course. We wouldn't want to make the white folks uncomfortable. White fragility. Mr. Santorum, who you can find more information about at spreadingsantorum.com, says there was nothing here. That colonists came here from Europe to practice their faith and set up a country based on the Ten Commandments, where our morals and founding documents were based on the teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, my Bible's a tad dusty, but I don't recall the book where Jesus killed and raped a bunch of indigenous men, women, and children. Must have been the Fox News edition. I've only ever read the King James Version. But Rick says, we came here and created a blank slate. We birthed a nation from nothing. Yeah, there was nothing here. Well, except those damn indigenous people that were here first. They're quite awful, really. The way they were peacefully living off their own land in their villages with their homes, roads, and monuments. Nothing. It came as no surprise that it wasn't until halfway through Rick's duplicitous douche rocket declaration that he remembered the indigenous people of North America. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, there isn't much Native American culture in American culture. Now, that's some cringy Caucasian cacophony. There's a long list of reasons why only 1.3% of the United States population is Native American, and it doesn't have anything to do with the Ten Commandments. Let's see. Was it the genocide that we've yet to acknowledge? The Christian supremacy? The white supremacy? The systemic suppression? Indigenous people are too often forgotten in this country, and Rick didn't do anything but prove that point with his racist Republican rhetoric. But let's talk about Native American culture. Rick, it's probably best that you sit this one out. Go polish your forehead or something. It's massive. Now, before the syphilitic pale-faced demons infested the already claimed New World, like STDs under the Trump administration, some indigenous people recognized 5 genders. You see, LGBTQ people and gender identities aren't anything new. We've always been here. It's just that hateful heterosexuals throughout history didn't like us, so they canceled us. You have male and female, which are sexes, and even intersex, which is when a person is born with a reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't seem to fit the typical definitions of female or male. But gender is so much more complex than the gender stereotypes that the colonists forced onto everyone. Two-spirit is an umbrella term created in the 90s that bridges indigenous and Western understandings of gender and sexuality. The term was introduced by indigenous people with the goal of educating people about the traditional teachings in a contemporary context. Two-spirit refers to another gender among most, if not all, of the first people of North America. A gender that had a proper and accepted place within Native societies. It implies that the individual is both male and female, and that these aspects are intertwined within them. Indigenous two-spirit people combine the activities of both men and women along with traits unique to their status as two-spirit people. Two-spirit males often became weavers, usually a woman's role, as well as healers, which was a male role. Two-spirit females engaged in activities such as hunting and warfare and became leaders in war and even chiefs. By combining these activities, they were often among the wealthier members of the tribe. Two-spirit people were historically held in high regard and were often considered sacred or divine and held important positions. Now, when Europeans came to North America, they brought hideous shoes, syphilis, and patriarchal societal traditions like gender roles. They obliterated Native customs and culture and forced generations of indigenous children to be educated in Christian and European traditions. Basically, the white people told the native people they could become exactly like them or get murdered. That's what Jesus would have done, right? But many of those generations of indigenous children never got to learn about the richness of their own cultural history. And here we are today, governed by foolish fucks with dusty brains like Rick Santorum and Marjorie Taylor Greene, the nympho Neanderthal from Georgia. They don't know a damn thing about history, science, or human decency. They love the obliteration of other people's culture, human rights, and facts. Now, the two-spirited Native Americans, once recognized as visionaries, healers, medicine people, and caregivers, are now invisible to their own tribes and remain displaced by Western Christianity. There are more than 500 distinct indigenous cultures in North America, and transgendered indigenous people are often rejected by their families. Even same-sex marriage remains a point of debate in a lot of tribes. It only goes to show that hate and intolerance are taught. Nothing like a good old-fashioned brainwashing to exterminate culture, people, and love. But recently, there have been many moves in many tribes to return to the older, more complex gender teachings. In other words, they're going to throw out the toxic fuckery they were forced to learn from us white people. 33 states have introduced more than 100 bills that aim to curb the rights of transgender people in this country. 31 states have introduced bills that ban transgender athletes from participating in sports that match their gender identities. Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee have already signed these bills into law. In Texas, House Bill 1399 would prevent healthcare providers from performing gender confirmation surgery or prescribing puberty blockers or hormone treatment to anyone under 18. SB 1311 would revoke the medical license of healthcare providers and physicians who prescribe or perform gender reassignment procedures on anyone younger than 18 years old. You know, after they've gone through puberty, which causes those substantial musculoskeletal difference everyone is so worried about in girls' sports. Let me ask you this. If a young child is old enough to know that they're heterosexual and cisgendered, why isn't a young LGBTQ child old enough to know what they are? Stop the obliteration and start the assimilation. I have fucking had it with hypocristians erasing people who aren't exactly like them. Get educated on history and science or shut the fuck up. I want everybody to have a great fucking day unless you're an ignorant, closed-minded asshole.